Obviously, there's plenty going on, and I got some notes that I'll start with, and then, the quintessential kind of ask me anything. So look forward just to the discussion and the dialogue. It's a big day in the Neff house, too, Oconee County Schools. So not only Grady starting third grade, but a big day with the twin boys starting kindergarten, like a milestone kind of day. So I had the drop off and the walk to the classroom, and I've gotten some reports from Kristen that it was a good day. So anyway, I know a lot of us have or will or are going through that as well. So I'm just sharing that personally. Listen, really appreciate this group getting together too, and what you do to cover and Clemson and support and do your jobs, but tell our stories. And that continues to be a moving target in sports entertainment, college athletics these days. But you guys do it better than any. And I hear things from conference staff, et cetera, from Greensboro of oh gosh, it's a zoo when Clemson comes, and here come the Beatles, and that's a lot because you guys come and follow and tell our stories and have interest and are supportive. And so just the appreciation of that. This time of year it's a grind, and you guys are boating over across the moat to get here on days like today, but really appreciate that. I mean that genuinely, and obviously for me, and there's been a lot of movement, a lot of changes. College athletics has never been more dynamic than right now, so I'm really eager to just continue to be transparent and tell our story from my lens and strategies, and appreciate how you guys go about that too, on our behalf, so to speak. But ultimately, just the partnership and the roles are really special. So I mean that, and again, it's times like this time of year, there's a lot going on, and so I know you guys are grinding away. I'll start with a handful of notes and comments, and then we'll just dive into it. Obviously, just a look back. I know I had time with the trustees, our board of trustees, a couple weeks ago, and did a little bit of a recount and look back. But by all accounts, last year's athletic year, 24-25, was as good as any we've had at Clemson, with 3 ACC championships. Certainly back to college football playoff for football program, most wins in school history for men's basketball. One of 3 schools that finished the top 25 end of the season polls in our 3 revenue driving sports: football, men's basketball, and baseball. And so that certainly matters from a business, a revenue standpoint, of course, but obviously with 21 sports, 550 student athletes, 16, now 17 head coaches with our new co-head coaches in gymnastics. The comprehensive, the broad-based nature of our department, I couldn't be more proud. And we're going to continue to lean into football as we always have, from an investment and a business lens, of course, let alone just the prominence of what that means for our community and our institution. But the broad-based nature of that, and as we look back on this past year, was really a testament of that. Growing record revenue from annual giving standpoint, certainly with IPTAY, has never been more difficult from a discretionary giving and contribution standpoint for those that love college sports and are passionate about it, certainly like our fan base is. So the continued success and engagement and commitment from IPTAY and staff, record ticket revenue. Ultimately, that means record number of attendance and butts in the seats, so to speak. Really just a special year. Over 1 million fans visited our events and venues at Clemson, and certainly a record number of students as well, with our part of the #1 student experience at Clemson. Always important as we look intra-campus, intra-student body standpoint. Savannah Bananas in April was an event unlike any other. It's been cool to watch their engagement nationally throughout the summer. The Neff boys have been locked into that with Philadelphia and Baltimore maybe this past weekend, and Fenway. And so the fact that we were the first environment like that, at least from a big football stadium standpoint, and what that has meant for our community. But also it's indicative of, and you'll see more, our fans will see more of those type of non-sport type of engagements down the road. Obviously, it's easy to think to concerts and things like that, but we're very active in what that strategy could look like, deploying our facilities throughout the year, certainly the engagement within our community and our fan base, and then certainly a revenue component of that as well. So more to come on that, but the Bananas was a really cool start and litmus test for what that could look like, and we're eager to have more of that in the years ahead. Certainly, we're around the corner later this month. with August 30th with the LSU game. I've often said, from an industry standpoint, the industry of college athletics, I think, is the hardest calendar flip from July 31st to August 1st. July, it's a little lower key. There's no events. Feels like there's summer planning. Teams are training. You flip to August 1st, and it's like, holy cow, we got a game later this month, and all the teams are back in session, and school's about to start, and we got to do all this by the first game. And so the fact of flipping to August 1st, and now we start to look ahead very, very much so towards games and events. We had a women's soccer exhibition game at Riggs yesterday in some of the weather, which was kind of the first I guess it was an exhibition and competition, but getting started. And then again, we're 3.5 weeks away from under the lights against LSU night game. Power of the Paw has never been higher. We're going to continue to double down on our brand, our prominence, viewership, certainly a component of that now more than ever from an ACC standpoint. I'm sure we'll talk about that. Happy to host ACC Network, The Huddle, here for that game. Saw the announcement from the ACC a couple weeks ago with The Huddle moving around now to a different selection of games within the ACC home games this year. Huge deal. ESPN, ACC Network have been really nimble on that strategy. We've been really part of that push, so to speak. So we'll host The Huddle on Bowman Field for that Saturday of the LSU game on that August 30th. So really excited for what that looks like for Clemson, local home games, but then ultimately in support of the ACC and ACC Network and ESPN in regards to that. And lastly, certainly just the continued monitoring and engagement within the landscape. And the landscape of college athletics couldn't be more dynamic. It's been incredibly the rate of change over the past 3 to 5 years. I feel like I've been at this podium, so to speak, and talked on the rate of change, the dynamic nature of college athletics annually. And we've certainly seen a lot of examples of that. You've seen a lot of our strategies around what that looks like, but our anticipation and my job is to make sure we're being strategic and nimble for what that rate of change looks like for the coming 3 to 5 years, so to speak. And that's our focus ahead. The implementation of the House case settlement has certainly been frontal focus. Couldn't be a higher priority for us in our department. Certainly what that looks like locally with the deployment of our revenue share dollars. We've talked about that. We are, without question, fully funding and all in on our revenue share distribution strategy of how we allocate that amongst teams, and ultimately the strategies with in support of our coaches to deploy from a roster standpoint across many of our sports. Scholarships, we've talked about that, but really to emphasize our lean and leverage into broad-based scholarship additions, 150 new scholarships, again, supported by IPTAY. So much of the ethos here at Clemson with IPTAY since 1934 and that scholarship investment and what that looks like across the board. Again, as I said earlier, football continues and will be our investment strategy from a business standpoint, but broad-based sports, 21 sports, and that allocation of additional scholarships, 150, is significant. Previously, we had 275 scholarships kind of collectively, and adding 150 to that is significant. I'd argue, I don't know the data on this, but from a per capita standpoint, that might be the most or as big of an increase of any other school in the country. Something we're incredibly proud of. And again, across all of our sports for that type of deployment. And then lastly, and certainly probably the most moving or still being figured out amongst all of us is commercial NIL, right? And how that looks within NIL Go under leadership of the College Sports Commission. The build of our commercial NIL infrastructure is the highest priority. And for as much as we are all in on revenue share, 20 million, like a lot of schools like us, that differentiator for us of how we leverage and facilitate commercial NIL is significant. It is one of our main focuses ahead. Certainly, Clemson Ventures is an initiative we announced a year ago, I believe, here, and has local or has internal revenue generation strategies to it, but it was absolutely done a year ago in anticipation of our ability to facilitate and be strategic around this type of NIL type infrastructure. And so there'll be more to come on what that engagement looks like within and alongside Clemson Ventures, in IPTE, and how that will be a leading edge for us as we look to support our coaches in 21 sports and build rosters above and beyond just scholarship allocation, which is significant, and our revenue share deployment that we've talked about. So there's plenty there. Again, the nomenclature of landscape is something that's broad-based, and I think we're something going to lean into it. I'll start with a question in the back. Yes, sir.
Mr. Neff, Mr. Neff. Dabo Sweeney with Clemson. I just want to know.
Thanks for being here, Dabo. Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to know how your summer went. Were there any amazing vacations that you went on?
You missed my opening remarks around big day in the Neff house. Oconee County Schools, first day of class. Grady's in third grade. Emmett and Nolan Neff started kindergarten today. So I know you and Kath have been there, been a couple decades now, but a big, big day.
Mr. Neff, one more question. Follow up, Mr. Neff. How often does Larry Williams text you?
Larry who? Yeah, I'm just trying to get on the Dubcast. I just want to do a pod. That's all I want. That is. Why is he coming in that way? Like, I don't even know.
He's coming from an
Interview upstairs. He already hit the slide. Is he going down and up and down and up? Yeah.
Up here to Cat.
With that, I'll open it up for any further questions from the group. Listen, again, a lot to be excited about as we look back, look ahead. That's just a little bit of an overview, but look forward to the discussion wherever we want to take it.
Talked about vertical NIL, obviously, collectives are the other piece of that. The CFC has modified the guidance there. What is kind of the expectation of 110 Society, if that's still a thing that needs to exist, or if there's other ways that you guys can get those collective type deals to players, if that's still important?
Yeah, John, really important. I think if you look at the landscape, there's a lot of different ways to go about it. And there are a lot of schools like us that have maybe sunset or closing their prior collective. There's some schools that are keeping those. Some schools that are really leaning into their third-party multimedia rights provider. And we're incredibly unique with the play with Clemson Ventures. That being said, how we think about it, one, the intention of the House case settlement and with College Sports Commission is that the role of collectives is going to look different. So while they still certainly can exist, and again, there certainly are those that are going to function, the role for them to facilitate commercial NIL deals is the differentiator. And so I think for us, whereas 110 Society, which served an incredible purpose in tandem with IPTE and with our boosters to really generate revenues from a booster fundraising standpoint, that looks very different now. And so for us to lean in and facilitate from a commercial NIL business standpoint, that best aligns with Clemson Ventures. And the fact that that's a in-house nature for us, and that's an entity that already engages, their role is to generate revenue from a commercial standpoint, businesses and sponsorship, so to speak. The ability for us to have underneath Clemson Ventures an agency-type role and facilitation for commercial NIL is the unique strategy. And so, yes, our ability to flow deals through Clemson Ventures is how we're going about it. I will say, too, from our fans and donors standpoint, we're going to continue to need engagement from events that we'll set up via Clemson Ventures and other activities, events, appearances. We're going to really lean into Clemson Plus, which is an existing mechanism that we've had for content and direct share platform for our student athletes. And so how we look to reposition that for donor engagement that think we can facilitate some commercial NIL dollars that way. So it's just very different as far as what collectives or how NIL, commercial NIL is intended to look. And it's going to be more comprehensive in nature. We're thinking about it, Clemson Plus, Clemson Ventures, some appearances and events to be able to build that above the cap type dollars. That's going to be incredibly important.
You said college athletics is dynamic right now. I think others have used, less flattering terms to describe it. How much faith, or what do you make of how quickly things, I don't want to say fell apart, but people are describing it as that, and how much faith do you have moving forward? Guardrails and structure and all that.
Yeah, I don't love the word guardrails, like it just personally. It feels like really limiting in nature for student athlete empowerment and valuation, let alone just you know, how you operate. I get the point of it, and the word that's often used to your point, Larry. Structure important. I do think that the House case settlement, creation of CSC, College Sports Commission, and the aspects of scholarship increases, revenue share distribution, those are pretty straightforward, pretty structured. You know, while there's you know, local strategy around how you deploy rev share and all that. So I love the ability to be really strategic and different in how you go about it. The leading edge and really where you're getting at from a commercial NIL standpoint, yeah, and you know, we're 5 weeks into the creation and launch of that methodology, that regulation, so to speak. It's 5 weeks in. You know, like any other startup, there's going to be learning, maturation, bumps in the road. We've seen that, and so I think we're experiencing that. I'm confident that like the structure, the innovation of how schools, Clemson in particular, will find the way to navigate within that structure in a competitive way. That's our focus. So we know what the intention and the rules are around, and we're certainly gonna abide by those in a very aggressive way, while also, and I'll maybe end in this way, Larry, we're set up to be very nimble and flexible. You know, and as we've seen the rate of change over the past 3 years, and how it's something we've been very sensitive to, is our communication or consistency, even to our donors and supporters financially. We're talking to them one thing about, hey, where we need your help in dollars, and then I feel like 3 months later it's a little bit different, and then 3 months after that it's a little bit different, and so like that confusion is really hard as we've been managing it, and then we try to simplify it and try to have a very focused message and strategy outward. All that to be said, so we're going to be very direct in that, but also we're just going to have to be very nimble on how things continue to adapt.
As far as playing South Carolina on Saturday, I know Dabo has said he's okay with it. Columbia is not okay with it here. Are you kind of with him there that never in Clemson on Wednesday? Never
say never. That's also a Dabo phrase, right? So, but yeah, you know, that was it was a decision. I know it's had some trailing discussion on it, understandably. But that was that was an opportunity a year ago, or whenever it may be, and we made the decision at that point to for our game here to want to still play it on a Saturday, and you know, obviously the game in Williams-Brice this year is also on a Saturday. So, is that going to come up annually or every year? Not sure, but should it? Like we're gonna we'll make those decisions when it comes up, and so that's not a never say never, but it is you know, part of the fundamentals of the discussions that we had, and Coach Sweeney and staff at Clemson was around the importance of Saturdays and after Thanksgiving, and what that means for our community and student environment and high school football and playoffs and all that stuff. So there's all those aspects that would continue to be part of the discussion or the decision that we'll handle those when or if they should show themselves down the road.
Alcohol sales, you kind of had a big, you know, week 1 game for that in football. Just how do you feel about rollout of that, how the pilot program kind of went in the spring, and what people can expect sales-wise and maybe safety and other stuff-wise?
That's right, Chappell. The fan environment safety is going to just continue to be the leading decision matrix on how we roll it out. As we look back for the spring, really pleased with how that rolled out. No significant fan environment or safety concerns. I think it was well managed. We're continuing to staff up towards the management of what that looks like, recognizing that games in the Valley, and certainly the first one has a different order of magnitude. Revenue was significant, about $500,000. Great. That's not the why, but that's a component to it. So look forward to rolling that out, not only just in football, but the rest of our venues this fall as well. So we'll have some information on that coming out.
I know it's hard to look into the future, but let's do it. Let's say that Clemson's ahead of LSU with 3 minutes left and fans crowd the wall and you beg them not to go, but they go anyway. Do you pay the fine? What happens after that? You know, do you say, hey, please don't do it again, or do you say, hey, this might end? Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it, David. We Gathering the Paw tradition is really, really special. at Clemson, really unique, and something that, as you saw our statement from a couple weeks ago around the ACC policy, something that we want to continue. Now it's got to look different. We're going to abide by and support the new ACC policy, and so we need our fans' help with that, in recognition of that we're trying to balance respecting the unique tradition and continuing the unique tradition that we have, while also respecting the policies that are at hand, and just the safety and environment of what post-game field looks like, particularly after charged games, LSU or otherwise. So all that to be said, yeah, we are working on what the sequencing and what post-game process looks like. Certainly over the coming couple weeks, we're going to communicate to the fans of what that looks like. I'll double down and say it again. We need our fans' help and support and recognition of that. And it's a really passionate topic for me, too, in particular. And so we're going to manage each game as they come, 7 a year, maybe more, depending on playoff circumstances. And so those are our expectations for the first one, for our LSU game. And we'll go through our post-game sequencing and respect and manage from a safety and an ACC policy standpoint, see how the first game goes, and then continue to adapt and adjust from there. And here's the other thing. It's easy to think through 7 games at Memorial Stadium, and certainly the first one, but it's also Little John, and, you know, all of our venues. But we've certainly had our fair share of environments and court stormings and that type of celebration in Little John as well, to the credit of our men's basketball program over the last couple of years. And so so those type of event management aspects for all of our venues, obviously Memorial and Little John being the 2 primary, are really important that we communicate and clear and ask for the support of the fans and the students, right? Students are so much of the leading charge for that in all those venues. And so it's a really highly focused task for us over the coming couple weeks.
Do you hire extra security, extra shirts down there?
Yeah, we're gonna absolutely. We're staffing up, and we're gonna reconcentrate them what that looks like post game, and then even like from an egress standpoint afterwards, it's going to look a little different because we would anticipate there's going to be less fans on the field, right, given the policy. And so what does that look like as we're all leaving and heading to parking lots and Williamson Road, Centennial Road, and the pedestrian and vehicular circumstances. So there's also not only after 000s, what does that time look like, but the dominoes out, that it's just going to be a different environment that we're responsible for all of that driveway to driveway.
You guys announced Clemson Vision announced a jersey patch for the mascot, but no event held, I guess.
That's right.
For future sponsorship opportunities, maybe on the field or around Memorial Stadium, I guess, are you guys exploring those aspects as to gain more revenue in this house settlement area?
Yeah, Darian, great question, and we were proud to roll out the Novant partnership. And the unique strategy with the jersey patch, but albeit on a mascot. So yes, the opportunities to generate revenues with the commercialization of that is part of Clemson Venture strategy, but in a really thoughtful way. And we have Frank Howard Field, Memorial Stadium. So there are non-negotiables for how we go about it, but thoughtful and strategic partnership and sponsorships is certainly part of it and part of the auspice of Clemson Venture. So we are having some conversations around that with some potential partners for as early as this fall for Memorial Stadium. There's been a partnership logo on the court in Little John. So these things aren't foreign to sports or even Clemson, but in a very measured, strategic way is how we're looking to go about it.
Is there any thought of phasing back in the collective?
We've certainly talked about it. We have to have optionality. Again, the 110 Society, which we had a transition within our collective environment over the couple of years. It was Tiger Impact, which served a really critical role. This is 4 and 3 years ago. Really critical role as we first started navigating the NIL landscape. That transition to 110 Society. Obviously, IPTAY was is stitched into some of that communication and strategy. And so, again, what we know now is that NIL, while still certainly in effect, is intended to look very differently. That's what the settlement and the guidance from CSC, et cetera, suggests. And so we are leaning into heavily what the intention and the regulations around that are, specifically through Clemson Ventures. Wow, back to your point, Larry, being nimble and what that looks like for our environment, commercial environment, collective environment, or otherwise, certainly would be on the table. We're not going to be caught flat-footed if that's a direction we need to transition to.
Talked about Clemson essentially adding another $26 million in anticipated expenses between rev share, scholarships. I know that comes from a lot of different buckets, but in simplest terms, that $26 million is going to be funded from what?
Well, I'm really proud of how we've continued to adapt our business strategy. So I'll answer it in a couple ways, Chapel. One is the recognition that we certainly need to have as a department towards the changing landscape of higher education, right? And so President Clements, our board, and just the dynamic that is having to be managed from a campus, a faculty, the academy standpoint, research funding, right? There's a lot of moving parts there. And in the very simplest sense, our athletics department is an auxiliary unit of the university, albeit a very overt one and a very strategic and highly leveraged one. But I like to think small in that manner just to, again, recognize it's one of the things that I love most about my job in our industry is it's sports, but it's higher education, American higher education. So I love that. So my point is our respective, there's a lot of moving parts with the business of higher education. All that to be said, we've increased or raised revenues close to $40 million year over year from last year to this year, primarily driven by what our intended lift is from ACC distribution, success initiatives, the new viewership model that you all know about and we can talk about. That's a significant lift for us. Certainly some of these other revenue pieces that Darian's talked about with sponsorships, alcohol, sales and sponsorships is a significant part of that. As well, again, leaning into the Clemson Venture strategy. Admittedly, our ticket price points and IPTAY memberships, and that's one that incredibly sensitive on. That's a consumer-facing component where, ticket prices were increased in a very thoughtful, analytical manner, as were IPTAY membership levels, not something we take lightly. But I would tell you the response that our fans and IPTAY members have had towards that has been incredible, and we're sold out LSU game, anticipate to sell out the rest as we work through it. IPTAY membership levels have never been higher. So all of those little levers that we've pulled, and a lot of those are intra-athletics department, as far as how we're generating our own revenues and managing our business. And I know I've talked about and shared about how need to be thoughtful, and we are on expenses too, right? Back to the changing business model of college athletics. That means how we travel, what our rosters are, what the support for our teams are, while still having student athlete experience as the number one component. So I feel like it gets watered down a little bit. The changing business of college athletics, it's a really big catch-all, but there's a lot of really strategic things that we're pulling on both sides of the lever, revenues and expenses, in order to satisfy the new $26 million expenses, $26 million expense plus. That's really important for us.
When you announced Clemson Ventures, you said it could be a vehicle potentially for private equity. Like, how much have you actually looked into the possibility of that? What are the actual positives and negatives that you've balanced there?
Yeah, we have significantly, and there are really well read on what those opportunities are, and we're rather connected in that space. We haven't taken any next steps or any steps of significance as it relates to that external funding or private equity or private capital. Certainly, there's conferences and other schools that are having those type of conversations too. So what that looks like down the road, David asked 3 to 5 years. Gosh, I don't know, but I do feel really equipped that we're set to be strategic on what that could look like. I don't anticipate that at this point. We certainly haven't at this point. I think it's incumbent on us to, again, change the size of the coin, raise revenues, manage expenses. The need to be competitive has never been greater.
It's that time of year, everybody starts getting parking assignments and ticket assignments, and some people get a little bit mad. But how many parking spaces football losing because of the parking garage, the construction that's going on, and the next year or two could be a little tight in spots,
Do
right?
you guys get mad? Did Ross and Jeff roll out like press box seat assignments? Is that a thing? Do you guys have to? Okay. Game by game. Yeah, we're great. Yeah. Well, we don't part game by game. We part season by season. I don't have a hard count for you, David. It is that time of year, to your point. Parking garage, build, under construction, lot. Certainly this year over year, we have less parking spots. Certainly even more proximate parking spots, admittedly. That being said, I'll speak to where the strategy and a lot of the discussion are. We do anticipate a year from now to have a lot of access and really great parking around I call it the green space, which is just, I guess, east between Motor Pool, Johnstone, Demolition, Core Campus. So really just on the other side of Scroll of Honor, if you guys are mind's eyeing with me. And so that's going to be significant amount of new spaces, really proximate, green space, so like not just a hard surface lot. So that's a year away. So while there was continued reduction of spots this year with construction, that's going to be a big one that we're going to roll out this upcoming off season. Obviously, the parking garage coming online, I think that's 2027, so still a couple years away. That's going to add inventory. It's different inventory. Parking deck is different than most of our fans are used to with tailgating, but there's going to be there's certainly appetite for that. But the development of campus proper, it's athletically or otherwise, part of what we got to manage. Lastly, and I'm just going to use the facility question as an offshoot. Trustees have rolled out over the past couple meetings the plans for the Clemson Health Center, which there is some construction that started on that up Perimeter Road, really across from Botanical Gardens. That's going to be a huge, huge project for campus. And for our community, there's going to be some community access to it, is my understanding, and certainly the support for students and student athlete and performance components in there too. So I'm not co-opting into that project, but that's a huge initiative for the institution, for President Clements and the board, that has some parking effect, which is why I'm talking to it, but excited for that to be rolled out more for our community over the coming couple years.
So Derby, the renovation is done. You've got gymnastics and lacrosse take care. What is next for athletics in terms of new or redoing things?
These feel like really traditional questions, like facilities. Great, let's talk on that. The Watt Family Performance and Wellness Center, huge high impact project. I actually got to run in there during lunch while it was raining today. High impact strength and conditioning, sports med, nutrition for all of our student athletes, really all of our Olympic sports, really day to day. We're under construction. You've seen the expansion and renovation of Little John Coliseum, Swan Pavilion, catty corner to IPTE over there. So that'll be under construction for the next 16 months or so, kind of phased in and out of basketball season. Huge next step for our basketball programs, both men and women, donor supported there. So all that to be said, you've seen those and those are completed. The best answer, or the most interesting answer to your question is we're going to pick the pencil back up and do some feasibility study at Memorial Stadium. There's a lot of need there at the stadium. Certainly we've had investments over the years with premium seating and video board, scoreboard lights, right? And so there's certainly opportunity and demand for additional premium seating. What does that look like on the east side of the stadium? We've done different studies on that over the years, but want to really look at what that could look like for premium space, suites, clubs, certainly different demographics of premium area at our stadium. But then also that touches the entire stadium is infrastructure, right? Concourse, restroom, concessions, alcohol sales we've talked about as Chapel asked, and so those points of sale, that's where I think the infrastructure, Wi-Fi, so that type of infrastructure is the best way to say it, is I'm excited for that type of investment and how that would pair with premium seating, with the ROI with that. I love that type of presentation of investment for Memorial Stadium, stuff that affects all 80,000 plus, and then also that has premium and some ROI to it. So we haven't really restarted that, but that's coming here this fall, David. I don't have a timeline or an order of magnitude of that. It's feasibility study in nature, but that would be our big focal point of what would be a next big project ahead.
Baseball moved the bullpen. Fans can stand around down there. Is there any thoughts on redesigning that after a year, or just leaving it as it is for now?
Yeah, from the the bullpen aspect area, that'll be fine. We need to manage the environment down there better and still have a very safe and appropriate environment for our visitors and the visiting bullpen, but also still have a great environment as a home team. So there's a balance there that I think we need to we can thread that needle a little better than what we were this past year. But I'm excited about what that did for Kingsmore Stadium. We haven't really dug into that yet, but we will come for Kingsmore for 26.
I know you guys are still figuring out how it's all going to work with this new model and revenue sharing and all that, but Danny White, for instance, has been very vocal about collective bargaining. I mean, do you think are you at all in that same camp in terms of a need for that, in terms of having rules and things really in place, or do you feel good about where things are now?
Yeah, continued continued development needs to happen. The collective bargaining, employment, federal legislation, that all kind of gets tied together. I do think there needs to be continued development there. The support of student athletes and empowerment and call it structure, I think it's taken really good steps with House case settlement and how that's continued to evolve. At the end of the day, I think that the structure piece I was kind of getting at with Larry's question earlier, where there's just some real certainty around what our operations are. Not guardrails. Certainty meaning, okay, it's in a better spot as from a legal standpoint, sure, from a political standpoint, so to speak. So if that answer is collective bargaining, if that means employment, if that means federal legislation or some combination of that, I think the optionality that exists is significant. We're still, again, it's been 5 weeks since the House case was settled and is being implemented. Am really intrigued and appreciative by the actions out of D.C., certainly the SCORE Act out of the House, Congress on the House side, and then the executive order from the president, I think are just indicative of the importance of college athletics, college sports in our country, in our society. And so what that path is, there's a lot of different angles to take with it. I think the activity and the support from D.C. Certainly speaks to the importance of continued change of college athletics to get to a point where there's just more structure that's more certain, not necessarily guardrailed or limited, so to speak.
In terms of the playoff,
I think the ACC's for the 5+11 model. Is that something you endorse? I mean, is there a want for that to be the model if it expands?
It's nice to have a head coach that's just like, hey, I'll play whatever, 2, 4, So Dabo and I certainly talk about it a lot. Commissioner Phelps has done a great job of kind of guiding that conversation, not only within the ACC room, but also with the other 3 Power 4 commissioners. Certainly the 5+11, I think, gives great access. Certainly an expansion to 16. There's pros and cons with that, but I think that is really intriguing from a college football standpoint. Certainly the 5 respects the conference champion. That attribute I think is even more fleeting and compelling. John, I think that would endorse. I don't know if endorse is the right word, but certainly supportive of that model. It's also indicative of, and we've talked a lot. You've seen actions from us with our scheduling and our Notre Dame partnership that we are building to be really adaptable for what different models or structure looks like, whether that's 5-11, other CFP formats, the value of strength of schedule, which certainly gets a lot of discussion these days, which I'm incredibly supportive of. We've been consistent in our scheduling model for years and playing at least 10 Power 5, whatever the vernacular at the time may be, BCS, Power 5, Power 4 schools. And we're scheduled out like that, but we're even actually scheduled beyond that, as you guys know, with our Notre Dame series, in order to have adaptability around what the ACC schedule looks like, what other conference schedules look like, what CFP format looks like, the value, I think the increasing value of what strength of schedule looks like. Again, our strategy has been built to be optionality on that, knowing that we don't control all those decisions, but really supportive of a lot of the progress that's being made from a CFP standpoint or otherwise.
Since we talked to you in April, there's been some additional information about Amy Smith via FOIA request. What's come out, some allegations that parents have made, verbal mental abuse. It's kind of a big picture question, but just looking back at that whole situation, was it a mistake to hire her? Do you regret that, given how things played out?
I think that the prominence that Clemson Gymnastics has shown in the 3 years, 3+ years that we've had the program has been incredible. And we've seen that with the 2 seasons that we've competed, with the brand that Clemson Gymnastics is nationally. We value the student athlete experience in all of our sports is a non-negotiable. So certainly followed protocol and worked through the transition with Amy, which was difficult and unfortunate. Maybe the best way I'll answer your question. All that to be said, couldn't be more excited about the hire of Justin and Liz, the Howells, and for Clemson to attract coaches of that caliber. They finished second in the country. Their resume is significant. Their fit within the rest of our head coaching room, so to speak, is something that I leaned heavy on them as we were recruiting. And I just think they fold in well to the caliber of head coaches that we have, and that was compelling on both sides. So I think it's just a testament to the next era for Clemson gymnastics, that we've arrived, let alone that our expectations are even higher, particularly with Justin and Liz being here.
Coach Babbage kind of mentioned, I guess, expanding like real estate beyond Doug Kingsmore Stadium, maybe building like some retail, some restaurants, some shops like that. Do you think those ideas are feasible for Clemson, and if why or why not?
Yeah, things like that. It's a good question, Darian. And a little bit to John referenced a kind of PE, private equity type question. You know, I think there are things. I don't mean to marry those 2 points, but there are aspirational things that we think and talk about here of what like long term looks like. What is the next? David asked 3 to 5 years. What is the next 5 to 10 or 15? And I don't mean to be so long term, but my point is those type of things. What is real estate? There's a lot of examples. Schools like us, they're doing real estate type developments. And there's a lot that's being done within professional sports entertainment. Those type of districts, how that fits within a community, like I'm really intrigued by. Admittedly, we haven't done much work on that type of development, whether that's some of the stuff that Coach Backett just talked about or other type of developments that we see around the country. But it's on the list, so to speak, to really to look to explore and what the next steps look like. And the reason I linked it back to some of John's questions was around Clemson Ventures. You know, Clemson Ventures is structured to be a vehicle that can operate and do things in a different manner, commercial, kind of more private type business, revenue generating in nature. So yes, intrigued by that. Admittedly, while we've done and are well read on a lot of other kind of bigger picture topics, that's probably one we haven't really started to dive into yet. But I think that's something that's down the road could be really intriguing, and how that fits within our community and for our campus is, I don't know, it's intriguing.
A lawsuit was put in against the ACC. Part of it was that it had chilled kind of the approach from the ACC. It chilled your ability to get offers from other conferences. So how do you guys approach that now? I mean, are you open and kind of canvassing for offers from other conferences, or how do you actually approach that now that you're no longer chilled and that way you have it clear out?
It's chilled. That's a good verb there. Yeah, a couple things on the ACC settlement member disputes. The objectives, or maybe the reasons why that was initially filed, and therefore our objectives that we were really pleased with to move forward with the settlement were, John, to your point, certainty around our future media rights. And so while that was uncertain before, your point, now there is certainty on what that looks like for future media rights ownership. That was primary one, just have certainty on what that looks like, given our anticipation and our preparedness for the dynamic nature of college athletics in the years to come. So that's real direct. That being said, in addition, objectively, financial position changing, and with ACC success initiatives, the new viewership model, the innovative nature of that Commissioner Phillips has led through, certainly something that we feel like is going to have big upside for Clemson, not just because we're Clemson, but because we have to go earn it and continue to perform on the field and be a compelling brand and drive viewership, et cetera, consider different scheduling strategies. All these things are interrelated. So very pleased with the outcomes of meeting our objectives of the future certainty around our media rights and current financial position. And all that to be said, continue to lean in hard to the ACC. I've said a couple times now, but I love the phrase. I've said it a lot more internally. A strong ACC is good for Clemson, and a strong Clemson is good for the ACC. And I don't mean that to be rote. Like when I think about that, like really mean that resonates. Wow, for us to be great members of the conference we're in. Also something I know I've said for a while, and it's been really intentional, and I'm incredibly proud of how we've handled our business, so to speak. And that goes at all levels within the athletics department, our university leadership, And that's important, and it resonates not only within the tough circumstances of being in litigation, but also currently and as we go forward. And so the landscape's going to continue to change. Yes, we are positioned to be nimble with that, while also needing to be great members and partners with those schools that we compete against within a conference, let alone our national expectations that we have, certainly in football, let alone across the board.
Does the federal government stepping in give you any concern? Are you afraid that your voice is not going to be heard, that, there will be a certain number of people, bigger schools and all being heard, and you being shut out? And how do you fight that?
Yeah, it doesn't give me concern. I guess I'll go back to it's indicative of the importance of college athletics and the uncertain nature of the current construct. And so, again, Congress, the Oval Office, I think I welcome that type of activity. We certainly engage in partnership across campus, myself, colleagues in Columbia or otherwise, like how we work locally, within our state legislature and General Assembly, let alone federally, your question. So I welcome it. It doesn't concern, but it certainly is complicated, and there's a lot of different aspects to that. And so exactly where the outcomes come, so I don't mean to be so optionality, and when I talk about collective bargaining versus employment versus federal legislation, it's really complex. College sports has grown to be incredibly complex, and so therefore the involvement of federal government, so to speak, may help simplify or give more structure to it. And so welcome that if that is potentially some outcomes from that.
Another thing Dabo said a lot is that this is all just going to be a giant super league at some point in football anyway. So, with the uncertainty of what the model is even going to look like, does that chill the idea of moving to another conference or where you have to be? You have to figure out what it's going to be in general in terms of football and basketball, but that's all plays.
Yeah, the broad, Coach and I've heard his, it's all gonna blow up, right? Holy cow, or it's all gonna be one big. So listen, obviously it's my job to be much more the practitioner as far as how that could come to form. There is a lot of discussion in groups and sidebars nationally as it relates to even broader picture. How does it look for the separation, so to speak, or the delineation between football, which for most schools is your significant primary revenue driver, versus the other, the 21 sports that we have here that don't drive as much revenue. And so, that's the beauty of college athletics, that the aspect that we have 2 or 3 that are revenue producers, but we have 21, business units. So all that to be said, John, the dialogue and activity around national type structures really connected on and well read on. And there's a lot of intriguing aspects to that, while recognizing current structure, conference membership, ACC for us, and the positives that come from that. So does it affect the broader picture? Absolutely. Do we hedge, or do you have to try to plot things out and decision tree and scenario things out? Absolutely. Anybody that tells you exactly how it's going to go is lying. But back to the optionality for us and being well read and connected is part of the game, and those type of things that you reference are all very live and active right now.
Do you see 2030 as a possible inflection point, just because a lot of TV contracts, and then that's when the buyout drop off is? Obviously anything can happen, but is that a time to maybe look at?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of logic to that, Chappell, for the reasons you ticked off. But I can't admit that there's a circle or anything on that. I think there's some naturality to that sure makes a lot of sense, but that's certainly not necessarily the mindset leading up to or even beyond that. Again, we're going to be great members of the conference we're in. I was actually thinking about this, and Jeff, I meant to talk to you earlier. Within the last 2 years, we've won 7 ACC championships, 7 different sports, meaning 7 different head coaches have won ACC championships of our 16 head coaches, so about half. So my point is, so I'm not going to go down the competitive path other than to say, hey, we still have to be great within the ACC, which is an incredibly strong conference across the board, while still having national expectations across the board. And there's all kinds of different ways we can go about it within the ACC.
I think you wrote to fans back, last month about scrutinizing expenses in your letter to the fans. I guess, what does that kind of look like for the athletic department when you're trying to reduce those costs while you're also trying to gain revenue at the same time?
Yeah, Darian, it's it's hard, and there's a lot of different, because we're all creatures of habit, and certainly, holy cow, like coaches are that to a T. And, so how you, and it's always more, and we want to invest more and grow and growth mindset and continue to have higher and higher expectations on the field and off, support of our student athletes. While the game's changing. And so, like how we travel, where we travel, how we schedule, administrative staff and support. I mean, admittedly, there's a lot of unfilled positions that we have administratively. I know we have some staff in the room, and a lot of us feel the brunt of that we have, more and higher expectations of things we do and support we give and environment and experiences that we put on. While, we need to manage the expenses and try to tighten the belt, so to speak. And so I don't mean to be so quaint as far as some of those business references, but we significantly look at like how we deliver administrative support, what our student athletes need primarily, and then, hey, where there's efficiencies within the department, within campus, and how we deploy that. So while we are proud and have been so focused on revenue generation, that expense management is significant. And again, this gets back to like we are no different and need to be a great part of the university. And there's a lot of that type of efficiency and lens from a higher ed standpoint. And so we need to do our part with that as well.
I got a question on the numbers. So you said you had how many on scholarship now for next 275, 225?
We've had approximately 275 scholarships, and we're adding 150 going to 425.
Number of athletes you have from all the teams.
We've had last academic year, we had 592 student athletes, 21 sports, 16 head coaches, and about 275 scholarships, all supported by IPTE. This upcoming academic year, approximately 425 scholarships, that's the plus 150. Our roster numbers, instead of 592, we anticipate to be right around 550. So that's indicative of roster limits being set while also having the designated student athlete, the grandfathering notion. So while the student athletes that are designated, that are grandfathered in, obviously can still count, over the coming 3 years, we anticipate that roster attrition for us to get down to likely right around 500, maybe 490 student athletes is what the stated roster limits would be. So we're kind of stair-stepping down, right? 600 approximately to about 550 now, and we anticipate that to continue to attrition down to right around 500 probably in a couple, 3 years.
Coach can have walk-ons if they want. For instance, this is the new roster limit for basketball, 15.
It is.
There's 13 on our basketball roster right now. They're all scholarship.
That's right.
So if Coach wanted to add 2 more players, he could add 2 scholarship guys, or he could add 2 walk-ons.
That's correct. So that's right, Tim. There is no moratorium on walk-ons. Walk-ons in the future are effectively students on a roster that isn't fully funded or isn't fully scholarshiped. And so to your point with basketball, 15, we've given Coach Brownell, Brad's got 15 scholarships available, so he could add two more to the roster, and they could be on scholarship. Obviously, we have a financial, there's financial components to that we would manage. But the notion that can't have walk-ons, you can have walk-ons, but again, we are leaning into, as I've talked on significantly, scholarship expansion, and so most all of our sports are going to have fully funded, fully scholarshiped rosters. We don't have to do that, and again, there'll be coach discussion that we'll have along the way, but that's where the walk-on component would exist, if it's needed per sport.
Anything else for Graham?
Good stuff. Really, really appreciate you guys coming. We've heard a couple things out there. I know you guys are hanging here for a little bit while longer. Thanks for being here. I'll end where I started for what you guys do, how you go about it. I'm around, excited for the year ahead. Holy cow, let alone August 30th. So really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.